Maya Rodriguez wiped down the bar counter for the third time in 10 minutes, her eyes scanning the crowded room of Murphy's Tavern. The Friday night regulars filled their usual spots, laughing over beer and telling the same stories they'd shared 100 times before. To anyone watching, she looked like any other small-town bartender in Cedar Falls, Montana. Nobody would guess that 5 years ago, she had been one of the most feared assassins in Eastern Europe. The bell above the door chimed as another customer entered. Maya looked up from the glass she was polishing and felt her blood turn to ice. The man standing in the doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of confident stride that screamed military training. But it wasn't his appearance that made her hands tremble. It was his face. A face she recognized from a life she thought she'd left buried. Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan scanned the bar with practiced eyes, taking in every exit, every potential threat, every face. When his gaze landed on the woman behind the bar, he stopped breathing for a moment. The blonde hair was different, shorter, and darker at the roots. She wore simple jeans and a black t-shirt instead of tactical gear. But those green eyes were unmistakable. He'd spent 3 years tracking this woman across 4 continents. And now here she was, serving drinks in a place that probably didn't even show up on most maps. Maya forced herself to keep moving, to act normal. She grabbed a clean glass and started polishing it, even though it didn't need cleaning. Her mind raced through possible escape routes. The back door led to the alley, but he'd probably have backup covering it. The windows were too small to climb through quickly. She was trapped, and they both knew it. "What can I get you?" she asked when Jake approached the bar, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. Years of training had taught her to hide fear, even when facing certain death. "Whiskey." "Neat." Jake's voice was exactly as she remembered it. Deep, controlled, dangerous. He sat down on the bar stool directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his aftershave, close enough that he could grab her before she could run. Maya poured the drink with steady hands, her muscle memory taking over. She'd served thousands of drinks in this bar over the past 3 years. It had become second nature, a simple routine that helped her forget who she used to be. But now, with Jake Sullivan sitting 3 feet away, every movement felt loaded with meaning. "You know," Jake said quietly, wrapping his fingers around the glass, "I've been to a lot of bars in my time. But I've never met a bartender who could field strip an AK-47 in under 30 seconds." The glass Maya was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound made several customers look over, but she waved them off with a forced smile. "Clumsy me," she said loudly. Then, in a whisper that only Jake could hear, "I don't know what you're talking about." Jake took a slow sip of his whiskey, never breaking eye contact. "Prague, December 2018. You put 3 rounds center mass into a human trafficking boss from 800 yards out in a blizzard. Best shot I've ever seen." Maya knelt down to clean up the broken glass, buying herself time to think. How much did he know? How long had he been watching her? More importantly, why was he here alone? In the old days, an operative like Jake would have brought a full team to take down someone like her. "You're mistaking me for someone else," she said, standing back up with the glass shards and a towel. "I've lived in Cedar Falls my whole life. Ask anyone. Is that what you tell yourself?" Jake's voice was softer now, almost gentle. "That you've always been Maya Rodriguez, small-town bartender? That Katerina Volkov never existed." The name hit her like a physical blow. Nobody had called her that in 5 years. She'd buried Katerina so deep that sometimes she almost believed Maya was real. Almost. "Katerina died in Bucharest," she whispered. "The whole world thinks so. I know. I'm the one who helped fake your death." The words hung in the air between them like a live grenade. Maya stared at Jake, trying to process what he'd just said. She remembered Bucharest, the warehouse explosion, waking up in a hospital with burns covering 30% of her body, and no memory of how she'd escaped. The doctors said it was a miracle she'd survived. Why? The question came out as barely a breath. Jake finished his whiskey and set the glass down carefully. Because sometimes even the monsters deserve a second chance. Before Maya could respond, the bar's front door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear poured through the opening, assault rifles already raised. Customers screamed and dove for cover as the men advanced, their movements coordinated and professional. These weren't local thugs. These were soldiers. Maya's body reacted before her mind could catch up. She rolled over the bar counter just as bullets chewed up the wood where she'd been standing. Years of dormant training flooded back in an instant. She was no longer Maya Rodriguez, friendly bartender. She was Katerina Volkov, and people were trying to kill her. Jake had already taken cover behind an overturned table, his own sidearm drawn. "Well," he called out over the gunfire, "looks like your vacation's over." The lead gunman barked orders in Russian, and Maya's blood chilled. She recognized the accent. Chechen, which meant these men worked for Viktor Kozlov, the arms dealer she'd supposedly killed in that warehouse explosion 5 years ago. The explosion Jake claimed to have helped her fake. "How many people know I'm alive?" she shouted to Jake while bullets shredded the bar around her. "As of 5 minutes ago, just me." Jake returned fire, his shots precise and controlled. "As of right now, too many." Maya Army crawled along the floor behind the bar, glass crunching under her elbows. She needed weapons, and she needed them fast. The bar's office had a safe where she kept the night's receipts, but, more importantly, it contained insurance she'd hoped never to need. A Glock 19, 2 spare magazines, and a combat knife. Old habits died hard. The gunfire intensified as more of Kozlov's men entered through the back door. Maya cursed under her breath. They'd covered both exits, just like Jake would have done. These men knew what they were doing. She reached the office door and slipped inside, her fingers working the safe's combination from pure muscle memory. The weapons felt familiar in her hands, like greeting old friends she'd tried to forget. The weight of the Glock was exactly as she remembered. 17 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. Not much against 6 trained killers, but it was a start. A shadow moved past the office window, and Maya fired twice through the glass. The shadow dropped with a grunt of pain. 1 down, 5 to go. "Maya." Jake's voice was tight with strain. "We need to move. They've got RPGs." Maya's heart sank. Rocket-propelled grenades meant Kozlov wasn't interested in taking her alive. He wanted her dead, along with anyone who might have helped her, including Jake. She kicked open the office door and sprinted back toward the main bar, firing as she moved. Her shots were instinctive, automatic, guided by training that was burned into her nervous system. 2 more of Kozlov's men went down before they could react to her sudden appearance. Jake was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but his aim was still perfect. His shots found their targets with mechanical precision, dropping attackers with the cold efficiency of a professional killer. Maya had forgotten how deadly Navy SEALs could be in close-quarters combat. "This way." Jake grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a door she'd never noticed before. It was painted the same color as the wall, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. "How did you?" "I've been watching this place for 6 months, Jake said, kicking the door open. "I know every entrance and exit." The door led to a tunnel that ran beneath the building. Maya could hear the remaining attackers regrouping in the bar above them, their heavy boots thundering across the floor. It wouldn't take them long to figure out where their targets had gone. As they ran through the narrow tunnel, Maya's mind raced with questions. How had Kozlov found her? How long had he known she was alive? And, most importantly, what did Jake Sullivan really want? "Where does this lead?" she asked, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Old mining tunnel," Jake replied without breaking stride. "Connects to a network that runs under half the town, built during the gold rush." They emerged into a larger chamber lit by Jake's flashlight. Maya could see several other tunnels branching off in different directions. Jake seemed to know exactly where he was going, leading her down a passage that sloped upward. "You've been planning this," she realized. "The escape route. You knew they were coming." Jake stopped and turned to face her, his expression grim in the flashlight's glow. "I didn't know when, but I knew they'd find you eventually. Kozlov's been hunting ghosts for 5 years. He was bound to get lucky sooner or later. So why warn me? Why not just let him finish what he started in Bucharest?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, the only sound there breathing in the confined space. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Softer, more human. "Because I know what it's like to want out. To want to be someone different than what the world made you." Maya studied his face in the dim light. She'd seen photographs of Jake Sullivan in classified files, read reports about his missions. On paper, he was the perfect soldier. Clean record, outstanding performance reviews, completely loyal to his country and his teammates. But, looking at him now, she saw something else. A weariness that went bone deep. The same exhaustion she'd felt every day for the past 5 years. "What happened to you?" she asked. "Same thing that happened to you. Too many missions. Too many lives on my hands. Too many nights wondering if I was still one of the good guys." Jake's flashlight beam wavered slightly. "The difference is, I never found a way out." The sound of voices echoed from the tunnel behind them, growing closer. Kozlov's remaining men had found the entrance. "We need to keep moving," Jake said, but Maya grabbed his arm. "Wait. If you've been watching me for 6 months, then you know about the people in this town. Mrs. Henderson who brings me soup when I'm sick. Tommy Walsh who tells me about his problems with his ex-wife. The Johnson family who comes in every Friday for dinner." Maya's grip tightened. "They're innocent. If Kozlov's men are still in that bar, they're already gone," Jake said. "Kozlov doesn't waste time on witnesses. He got what he came for." "Which was what?" Jake's expression darkened. "Confirmation that you're alive. And proof that someone's been helping you." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground air. "He knows about you. He knows someone with serious resources has been protecting you. Someone who could fake a death that convinced even his own intelligence networks." Jake started walking again, faster now. "Someone like me." They reached another branch in the tunnel system, and Jake led her down a passage that seemed to climb more steeply. Maya's legs burned from the exertion, but she kept pace. Behind them, the voices were getting closer. Kozlov's men were trained trackers. It wouldn't take them long to follow the trail. "There's something else," Jake said as they climbed. "Something you need to know about Bucharest." Maya's stomach clenched. She'd spent 5 years trying not to think about that night. The warehouse, the explosion, the burning pain that had covered her body. The 6 months of recovery that had followed, when she'd decided to disappear for good. "The intelligence you were sent to retrieve," Jake continued. "The files about Kozlov's operation. They weren't destroyed in the explosion." Maya stopped walking. "What are you talking about?" "The whole warehouse burned down. Nothing survived. I have them," Jake said simply. "I pulled them out before I triggered the charges. Names, dates, bank accounts, shipping routes. Everything Kozlov has built over the last decade." The implications hit Maya like a freight train. Those files contained enough information to destroy Kozlov's entire organization. They were also the reason he'd been hunting her for 5 years, believing she had died with his secrets. "Why didn't you turn them in? Why didn't you use them?" Jake's laugh was bitter. "Because my own government was in business with him. The weapons Kozlov was selling? Half of them came from American stockpiles. The officials he was bribing? Some of them were on our payroll." Maya stared at him in the dim light. She'd suspected corruption, but never at that level. Never involving the people who'd sent her on the mission in the first place. "So you saved me to keep me quiet?" "I saved you because you deserved better than to die for someone else's dirty money." Jake's voice was fierce now, angry. "Just like I deserved better than to spend my life cleaning up messes for people who don't care about anything but profit." They reached what looked like the end of the tunnel, a metal ladder leading up to a trapdoor overhead. Jake climbed first, checking to make sure the coast was clear before helping Maya up. They emerged into what looked like an abandoned gas station, moonlight streaming through broken windows. "My truck's outside," Jake said. "We can be out of the state by morning." Maya looked back toward town, where she could see the glow of Murphy's Tavern in the distance. For 3 years, that place had been her home. Not just her job, but her sanctuary. The place where she'd learned to be human again instead of a weapon. "What about the people? What about my life here?" "Your life here is over," Jake said bluntly. "Kozlov knows where you are now. He'll never stop hunting you. And anyone who might have information about you." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 5 years crashing down on her. She'd known this day would come. Deep down, she'd always known that Maya Rodriguez was borrowed time. But she'd hoped for more years. Maybe a lifetime of quiet mornings and friendly conversations and nights when she didn't wake up in a cold sweat. "Where would we go?" she asked. "Somewhere Kozlov can't reach us. Somewhere we can use those files to make sure he never hurts anyone again." Jake's voice was calm, steady. The voice of a man who'd made this choice a long time ago. "But I won't lie to you. It won't be easy, and it won't be safe." Maya thought about the customers she'd served that night. Regular people living regular lives, worried about regular problems. She thought about the new waitress she'd been training, a single mother trying to make ends meet. She thought about the owner, Murphy himself, who'd given her a job when she had nothing but a fake ID and a smile. All of them were in danger now because of her, because of what she'd been, because of what she could never fully leave behind. The files, she said finally. They could really bring down Kozlov's entire operation? Every last piece of it. His suppliers, his buyers, his corrupt officials, his money laundering operations. Everything. Maya opened her eyes and looked at Jake Sullivan, this Navy SEAL who'd spent 6 months watching over her like some kind of guardian angel. She saw the exhaustion in his face, the weight of too many missions and too many compromises. But she also saw something else. Hope. The possibility of redemption. Then, let's finish what we started in Bucharest, she said. Jake nodded, his expression grim but determined. Together? Maya looked one last time toward the town where she'd learned to be human. Then, back at the man who'd saved her life twice now. The life of Maya Rodriguez, small-town bartender, was over. But maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for something better. Together, they walked toward Jake's truck as sirens began to wail in the distance. Behind them, the abandoned gas station stood silent in the moonlight, keeping their secrets. Ahead of them lay a road that would take them far from everything familiar, toward a confrontation that had been 5 years in the making. Maya Rodriguez was dead. Katerina Volkov was still buried. But the woman climbing into that truck was something new entirely. Someone who understood both mercy and justice, both the cost of violence and the price of peace. Someone who was finally ready to fight back. The safe house sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, hidden among towering redwood trees that blocked it from satellite surveillance. Jake had driven them through the night, taking back roads and switching vehicles twice to throw off any pursuit. Now, as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Maya stood at the window watching waves crash against the rocks below. She'd been awake for 36 hours, but sleep felt impossible. Every sound made her reach for the weapon Jake had given her. Every shadow could be an enemy. The hypervigilance that had kept her alive during her years as an assassin had returned in full force, and she wondered if it would ever leave her again. "The files are in there," Jake said, setting a laptop on the kitchen table behind her. "Everything I pulled from Kozlov's warehouse before the explosion." Maya turned from the window, studying his face. Even after their escape, even after his confessions in the tunnel, she still wasn't entirely sure she could trust him. Trust was a luxury she'd given up years ago, and it didn't come back easily. "Show me," she said. Jake opened the laptop and typed in a complex password. The screen filled with folders containing thousands of documents, photographs, and financial records. Maya felt her breath catch as she recognized some of the files. Intelligence she'd risked her life to gather, information that dozens of operatives had died trying to obtain. "My God," she whispered. "You really did save all of it. Every bite." Jake's voice was grim. Bank records showing payments to senators and generals. Shipping manifests for weapons going to terrorist groups. Communication logs between Kozlov and his American contacts. "It's all here." Maya leaned over his shoulder to read, her training automatically cataloging and analyzing the information. The scope of Kozlov's corruption was even worse than she'd imagined. He hadn't just been selling weapons to the highest bidder. He'd been systematically undermining stability in 3 different regions, all with the blessing and assistance of officials who were supposed to be protecting American interests. "This name," she said, pointing to a document on the screen. "General Morrison. I know him." Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Jake nodded. "He's been feeding information to Kozlov for 8 years, including the details of your mission to Bucharest." The room seemed to tilt around Maya. "He knew?" "Morrison knew I was walking into a trap. Worse than that, he helped set it up." Jake pulled up another file, this one containing intercepted communications. "Morrison told Kozlov exactly when you'd be at the warehouse and what route you'd take to get there. The explosion wasn't meant to destroy evidence. It was meant to kill you." Maya sank into a chair, her mind reeling. She'd spent 5 years believing the Bucharest mission had gone wrong because of bad intelligence or rotten luck. She'd never imagined that her own side had betrayed her. "But you knew," she said slowly. You knew it was a setup. Jake's jaw tightened. I suspected. Morrison had been acting strange for weeks before the mission, making calls he didn't want anyone to overhear, asking questions about operational details that weren't his business. He pulled up another file. So I did some digging. Found encrypted communications between him and someone using Kozlov's known code phrases. Why didn't you stop the mission? I tried. I went to my commanding officer, Admiral Patterson. Showed him what I'd found. Jake's voice turned bitter. Patterson told me I was paranoid. Said Morrison was beyond reproach. Ordered me to stand down and let the mission proceed as planned. Maya stared at the communications on the screen, seeing her own death warrant written in coded language. So you went rogue. I couldn't let them murder you. Not for this. Jake gestured at the laptop. Not to protect these bastards and their blood money. The safe house fell silent except for the sound of waves outside. Maya tried to process everything she'd learned, but her mind felt overwhelmed. The betrayal went so much deeper than she'd imagined. It wasn't just Kozlov who tried to kill her. It was her own government, her own commanders, people she'd trusted with her life. There's more, Jake said quietly. The reason Kozlov found you in Cedar Falls. The reason he knew you were alive. Maya looked up from the laptop, her stomach churning. Morrison. 3 days ago, Morrison received a communication from someone claiming to have seen you. A tourist who'd visited Cedar Falls and thought you looked familiar from old intelligence photos. Jake pulled up the message. Morrison passed the information directly to Kozlov. Maya read the communication, her hands shaking with rage. Some random tourist had doomed her carefully constructed life because they'd thought she looked familiar. All those years of hiding, of building a new identity, destroyed by a chance encounter with someone who'd probably forgotten about it 5 minutes later. Morrison's meeting with Kozlov tomorrow, Jake continued. A private airfield outside Las Vegas. Kozlov's flying in personally to discuss your situation. My situation? How to find and eliminate you permanently, along with anyone who might have helped you survive this long. Jake met her eyes. They know about me now. They know someone with serious resources has been protecting you. Morrison's going to help Kozlov track down everyone involved. Maya closed the laptop, her mind racing. She thought about Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who'd become like a grandmother to her. About Tommy Walsh and his problems with his ex-wife. About all the innocent people whose only crime was knowing Maya Rodriguez, small-town bartender. We have to stop them, she said. We? Jake raised an eyebrow. An hour ago you weren't sure you could trust me. An hour ago I didn't know that my own government had tried to murder me. Maya stood up, pacing to the window again. These files, they're not just evidence of Kozlov's crimes. They're proof that American officials committed treason, sold out their own people for money. Which is exactly why they'll never see the inside of a courtroom. Too many powerful people would go down. Too many secrets would come to light. Jake joined her at the window. The moment we try to use those files officially, we'll be branded as traitors ourselves. Enemies of the state. Maya watched a seagull riding the wind currents above the ocean, free and unbound by the rules that trapped the rest of them. She envied its simplicity, its ability to soar above the corruption and betrayal that infected the human world below. Then, we don't use them officially, she said finally. Jake frowned. What do you mean? I mean we take Morrison and Kozlov off the board permanently. We use the files to hunt down every person in their network. We become judge, jury, and executioner. Maya turned to face him, her green eyes hard as emeralds. We go back to being what they made us. Killers. Jake was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. That's not justice. That's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. And afterward, when all the bodies are buried and all the debts are paid, what then? Maya hadn't thought that far ahead. For 5 years, she'd focused on being normal, on building a life that didn't involve violence or death. Now that life was gone, and she felt lost without it. The future seemed like an impossible concept. I don't know, she admitted. But I know I can't let them keep destroying innocent lives. I won't let Morrison and Kozlov murder people just to keep their secrets safe. Jake nodded slowly. In that case, I have a plan. But you're not going to like it. Maya raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The meeting tomorrow. Morrison and Kozlov think they're safe because it's happening on American soil, at a private airfield owned by one of Kozlov's shell companies. No foreign surveillance, no CIA oversight, no congressional committees asking uncomfortable questions. Sounds like the perfect place for an ambush. Except for one problem. They'll have security. Lots of it. Kozlov never travels anywhere without at least 20 armed bodyguards, and Morrison will bring his own protection detail. Jake pulled out a tablet and showed her satellite photos of the airfield. The meeting's happening inside a hangar that's basically a fortress. Motion sensors, thermal imaging, armed checkpoints at every entrance. Maya studied the images, her tactical training automatically identifying weak points and potential approaches. What about sniper positions? High ground, nothing within effective range. The airfield is in the middle of open desert. Nearest elevation is 3 miles away. Jake zoomed in on the hangar. We'd have to get inside to have any chance of taking them both out. So we get inside. How? We can't fight our way through 20 bodyguards. We can't sneak past that level of security. And we definitely can't walk up to the front door and ask politely. Maya smiled, and Jake felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't the warm, friendly smile of Maya Rodriguez, bartender. It was the cold, predatory smile of Katerina Volkov, assassin. Who says we need to fight or sneak? She said. What if we were invited? Jake stared at her. What are you thinking? Morrison doesn't know what you look like, does he? Officially, you're just a Navy SEAL who went rogue. He doesn't have current photos, doesn't know your real identity. Probably not. I've been operating under false identities for the past 6 months. And Kozlov doesn't know what I look like now. He's been hunting a ghost, working from 5-year-old intelligence photos of a woman who officially died in Bucharest. Jake began to understand where she was going with this. You want us to pose as someone else. Someone they'd trust enough to invite inside. Not someone else. Someone specific. Maya pointed to a name on the laptop screen. Vincent Cardenas. He's one of Kozlov's American contacts, according to these files. A weapons broker who's helped arrange several deals over the past 2 years. But Cardenas would be coming alone. Why would he bring backup? Maya's smile widened. Because he's paranoid about security. Because he's heard rumors that someone's been hunting Kozlov's people. Because he wants to make sure this meeting is safe before he commits to any new deals. Jake studied the files on Cardenas, reading through communication logs and financial records. The man was careful, professional, and exactly the type of person who might bring armed security to a sensitive meeting. It could work, he said slowly. But if they figure out who we really are, then we're dead. But we're dead anyway if we don't stop them. Maya closed the laptop and looked directly at Jake. This is our only chance. Morrison and Kozlov in the same place, away from their usual security networks. It's perfect. Jake weighed the risks in his mind. The plan was insane, suicidal, and completely dependent on fooling some of the most dangerous men in the world. But Maya was right about one thing. It was their only chance. I'll need to contact some old friends, he said. People who can provide us with the right credentials, the right equipment. People Morrison won't think to check with. How long do we have? Jake looked at his watch. 22 hours until the meeting. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. Maya nodded, already mentally preparing for the mission ahead. She thought about the woman she'd been for the past 5 years, the peaceful life she'd built in Cedar Falls. That woman was gone now, probably forever. But maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Maya Rodriguez had been a beautiful dream, but Katerina Volkov had been a weapon. And right now, the world needed a weapon more than it needed another small-town bartender. Then, let's get to work, she said. Outside the safe house, storm clouds gathered over the Pacific Ocean, and the wind began to howl through the redwood trees. Inside, 2 of the world's most dangerous people began planning the kind of operation that would either save countless innocent lives or get them both killed. Maya wasn't sure which outcome was more likely. But, for the first time in 5 years, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly in all directions, heat shimmering off the asphalt as Maya adjusted the rearview mirror of their stolen Mercedes. She'd traded her bartender uniform for a tailored business suit and blonde wig, while Jake wore the kind of expensive tactical gear favored by high-end private security contractors. To anyone watching, they looked exactly like Vincent Cardenas and his bodyguard arriving for a clandestine weapons deal. Checkpoint ahead, Jake said, his voice calm despite the tension crackling between them. Remember, you're nervous about security leaks in Kozlov's organization. That's why you brought backup. Maya nodded, slipping into character as easily as putting on a familiar coat. She'd spent years becoming other people, and Vincent Cardenas was just another mask to wear. A paranoid arms dealer who'd made millions selling death to the highest bidder. The private airfield appeared ahead, surrounded by chain-link fence and guard towers. Maya could see the hangar in the distance, a massive structure that looked more like a military installation than a civilian building. Two black SUVs flanked the entrance, their occupants watching the approaching Mercedes with professional interest. IDs, demanded the guard at the checkpoint, a thick-necked man with the kind of scars that came from real combat experience. Maya handed over the expertly forged documents Jake's contacts had provided. Vincent Cardenas, arms broker, with a reputation for discretion and a bank account in the Cayman Islands. The guard studied the ID for a long moment, then waved them through. So far, so good, Jake murmured as they drove toward the hangar. Maya's hands were steady on the steering wheel, but her mind was racing through contingency plans. The Glock 19 hidden under her jacket felt reassuring, as did the ceramic knife in her boot. But against 20 trained bodyguards and two of the most dangerous men alive, weapons would only get them so far. This mission would succeed or fail based on deception, not firepower. The hangar doors stood open, revealing a space large enough to house a commercial aircraft. Instead, it contained a conference table surrounded by chairs and enough armed men to start a small war. Maya recognized Viktor Kozlov immediately, despite the 5 years that had passed since Bucharest. He was older, grayer, but his eyes still held the cold intelligence that had made him one of the world's most successful criminals. General Morrison stood beside him, looking nervous in his civilian clothes. Maya felt a surge of rage at the sight of the man who'd tried to have her murdered, but she forced herself to remain calm. Emotion was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. "Mr. Cardenas," Kozlov called out in accented English. "Welcome. I trust your journey was uneventful." Maya stepped out of the Mercedes, Jake following close behind. She moved with the confident swagger of someone who'd made a fortune selling weapons to warlords and terrorists. "Uneventful enough," she replied, her voice pitched slightly lower than usual. "Though I'll admit, recent events have made me more cautious than usual." Kozlov's eyebrow rose. "Recent events? Someone's been hunting your people, Victor. 3 of your contacts disappeared in the past month. No bodies found, no ransom demands. They simply vanished." Maya gestured to Jake. "That's why I brought additional security. If someone's targeting your network, I want to make sure I don't become the next casualty." Morrison stepped forward, his face pale. "We believe those disappearances were unrelated to our operations. Random criminal activity, nothing more." Maya studied Morrison with the calculating gaze of a professional killer. "General Morrison, isn't it? I wasn't aware you'd be joining us." "General Morrison is here as my liaison to certain American interests," Kozlov explained smoothly. "His presence ensures that our arrangements remain mutually beneficial." Jake remained silent, playing his role as hired muscle perfectly, but Maya could feel the tension radiating from him. They were deep in enemy territory now, surrounded by enough firepower to level a city block. One wrong word, one suspicious glance, and they'd both be dead. "Shall we discuss business?" Kozlov gestured toward the conference table. "I understand you have questions about our upcoming shipments to South America." Maya nodded, walking toward the table with measured steps. She could feel the eyes of Kozlov's bodyguards tracking her movement, their hands never far from their weapons. These weren't street thugs or hired criminals. They were professionals, probably former Spetsnaz or GRU operatives who'd followed Kozlov into the private sector. As they reached the table, Maya noticed something that made her blood run cold. A laptop computer sat open next to Kozlov's chair, its screen displaying surveillance photos of the safe house where she and Jake had spent the previous night. Kozlov followed her gaze and smiled. "Impressive, isn't it? My people have been tracking you since you left Montana. We know about the safe house, about your contact with certain former Navy personnel, about your recent interest in classified files." Maya felt Jake tense behind her, but she kept her expression neutral. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. Please, Katerina. Or should I call you Maya? Or perhaps you prefer Vincent. Kozlov's smile widened. Did you really think we wouldn't recognize you? The famous ghost of Bucharest returned from the dead. The hangar fell silent except for the distant sound of wind across the desert. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could smell the gun oil and tension that filled the air. Around them, 24 weapons were suddenly trained in their direction. I'll admit, the disguise is quite good, Kozlov continued conversationally. But facial recognition software has improved considerably in the past 5 years. Bone structure doesn't lie, regardless of hair color or makeup. Maya's hand inched toward her concealed weapon, but stopped when she saw red laser dots dancing across her chest. Professional snipers, positioned in the hangar's rafters. Even if she could draw and fire, she'd be dead before the bullets left the barrel. The question, Kozlov continued, is what to do with you now. Originally, I planned to simply kill you and be done with it. But then, General Morrison suggested a more creative approach. Morrison stepped forward, his nervousness replaced by cruel satisfaction. You've caused us considerable trouble, Miss Volkov. Years of hunting, resources wasted, operations compromised. We think it's time you earned your keep. What do you want? Maya asked, her voice steady despite the hopelessness of their situation. Simple. You're going to use your particular skills to eliminate some problematic individuals for us. Politicians who've become inconvenient, journalists who ask too many questions, whistleblowers who threaten national security. Morrison smiled. In exchange, we'll allow your friend here to live. Maya glanced at Jake, seeing her own determination reflected in his eyes. They'd known this mission was probably suicide from the beginning. But she'd hoped to take Kozlov and Morrison with them. And if I refuse? Then, Lieutenant Commander Sullivan dies slowly and painfully while you watch. After which, we'll hunt down every person you've ever cared about in Cedar Falls. Mrs. Henderson, Tommy Walsh, the Johnson family. Everyone who showed kindness to Maya Rodriguez will pay the price for your defiance. The threat hit Maya like a physical blow. These monsters knew about the innocent people she'd left behind, the friends who'd become her chosen family. They'd use her compassion as a weapon against her, just as they'd used her patriotism years ago. You have 30 seconds to decide, Kozlov said, checking his expensive watch. After that, we start cutting pieces off your Navy SEAL friend. Maya looked around the hangar, counting enemies and calculating angles. 24 armed men, plus Morrison and Kozlov. Sniper positions in the rafters. Multiple escape routes blocked. In her years as an assassin, she'd faced impossible odds before, but nothing quite like this. 20 seconds, Kozlov announced. Maya closed her eyes, thinking about the life she'd built in Cedar Falls. The quiet mornings, the friendly conversations, the sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. That life was gone now, destroyed by the violence she'd tried so hard to escape. But maybe its memory could serve one last purpose. I have a counteroffer, she said, opening her eyes. Kozlov raised an eyebrow. You're hardly in a position to negotiate. The files, Maya said simply. The classified intelligence I supposedly died protecting 5 years ago. You want to know where they are? Morrison's face went white. The files were destroyed in Bucharest. The warehouse explosion was carefully staged to make you think they were destroyed. Maya smiled, the same cold expression that had terrified enemies across 3 continents. Did you really think I'd walk into that warehouse without a backup plan? Kozlov leaned forward, his eyes sharp with interest. You're claiming the files still exist? Every document, every photograph, every financial record, hidden in a place where your people will never find them. Maya met his gaze steadily. Unless, of course, something happens to me. She's lying, Morrison said desperately. The files are gone. We confirmed it. Did you? Maya pulled out her phone, showing them a photograph of the laptop Jake had brought to the safe house. This was taken 6 hours ago. I can see why you might have trouble recognizing your own handwriting, General, but I'm sure a forensics expert could confirm the authenticity. The hangar erupted in shouting as Morrison realized what he was seeing. Communications bearing his signature, financial records showing his payments from Kozlov, intelligence reports with his authorization codes. Everything needed to destroy both men's careers and send them to prison for life. Kill her, Morrison screamed. Kill them both before. His words were cut off by the sound of helicopters approaching fast from the east. Maya smiled as she recognized the distinctive rotor signature of UH-60 Black Hawks, military aircraft that definitely weren't supposed to be operating over civilian airspace. Kozlov's men were already moving, taking defensive positions as the helicopters circled the hangar. But Maya could see the confusion in their faces. This wasn't part of the plan. The thing about backup plans, Maya said conversationally, is that the best ones involve people your enemies don't know about. The hangar doors exploded inward as flashbang grenades detonated throughout the space. Maya and Jake hit the ground simultaneously, covering their eyes and ears as chaos erupted around them. Through the ringing in her ears, Maya could hear gunfire and shouting as heavily armed figures rappelled through the broken doors. When her vision cleared, she found herself looking at the most beautiful sight she'd ever seen. A full tactical team of Navy SEALs, their weapons trained on Kozlov's surviving bodyguards. At their head stood Admiral Patterson, Jake's former commanding officer, his face grim with determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patterson announced in a voice that carried across the hangar, "you're all under arrest for treason, conspiracy, and about 40 other federal crimes." Morrison tried to run, but found his path blocked by a SEAL who looked like he'd been carved from granite. "Admiral Patterson, thank God you're here. These people are terrorists. They tried to—" "Shut up, Morrison," Patterson said wearily. "We've been listening to everything for the past 20 minutes. Your old friend Jake here called in some favors, and we've been monitoring this meeting through satellite surveillance and digital intercepts." Maya looked at Jake in amazement. "You set this up?" "Insurance policy," Jake said, getting to his feet slowly. "I sent copies of those files to Patterson yesterday, along with a full confession of my involvement in your fake death. Turns out, when you give the Navy evidence that one of their intelligence officers is a traitor, they take it pretty seriously." Kozlov was on his knees now, zip-tied and surrounded by SEALs. But his eyes still held their cold intelligence, and Maya could see him calculating angles even in defeat. "This changes nothing," he said quietly. "You think arresting me will stop my organization? I have people in 40 countries, contacts in every major government. Someone will avenge this insult." "Maybe," Maya said, walking over to stand in front of him. "But they'll have to find me first. And I've gotten pretty good at disappearing." She knelt down to his eye level, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. "But I want you to know something, Victor. If any of your people, anywhere in the world, ever hurt an innocent person because of what happened today, I will find you. Prison walls won't protect you. Government custody won't save you. I will hunt you down like the animal you are. And I will make you pay for every drop of innocent blood." Kozlov met her gaze for a moment, then looked away. For the first time since she'd known him, the arms dealer looked genuinely afraid. Admiral Patterson approached as the prisoners were being led away. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan, you're going to have some serious explaining to do. Faking the death of a foreign operative, going rogue for 6 months, stealing classified materials." "Yes, sir," Jake said simply. "I understand. However," Patterson continued, "given the intelligence you've provided and the lives you've saved, I suspect the review board will be lenient. Assuming, of course, that you're willing to return to active duty." Maya felt a sudden stab of panic. After everything they'd been through, was Jake going to leave her to face an uncertain future alone? Jake looked at her for a long moment, then back at the Admiral. "With respect, sir, I think I'm done being a soldier. There are other ways to serve your country." Patterson nodded slowly. "I understand. In that case, you should know that certain government agencies are always looking for people with your particular skill set. People who can operate outside normal channels when the situation requires it." He handed Jake a business card with nothing but a phone number written on it. "When you're ready to get back in the game, call this number. Tell them Patterson sent you." As the official vehicles pulled away from the airfield, Maya and Jake found themselves alone in the desert, watching the sun set over the Nevada mountains. The hangar behind them was empty now except for evidence tape and the lingering smell of gunpowder. "So what now?" Jake asked. "Maya Rodriguez is dead. Katerina Volkov is officially alive again. Where does that leave you?" Maya thought about the question, watching the last light fade from the western sky. She thought about the peaceful life she'd lost, the simple pleasures of serving drinks and making small talk with friendly customers. That life had been beautiful while it lasted, but it had also been built on a foundation of lies. I think, she said finally, it leaves me exactly where I need to be. Jake raised an eyebrow. Which is? Somewhere between Maya and Katerina. Someone who understands both peace and war, both mercy and justice. Maya smiled, and, for the first time, it was neither the warm expression of a small-town bartender nor the cold mask of a professional killer. It was something entirely new. Someone who can help people like Patterson find the truth, even when it's buried under layers of lies and corruption. Jake looked down at the business card in his hand. Partners. Partners, Maya agreed. They walked toward their car as stars began to appear in the desert sky above. Behind them, the empty hangar stood as a monument to the corruption they'd helped expose. Ahead of them lay a road that would take them toward a future neither of them could predict. Maya Rodriguez was gone forever. Katerina Volkov would always be part of her history. But the woman walking across that Nevada desert was something new entirely. Someone who'd learned that the most important battles weren't always fought with weapons, and that sometimes the greatest victory was simply ensuring that innocent people could sleep safely in their beds. Someone who'd finally found a way to be both strong enough to face the darkness and gentle enough to protect the light. As they drove away from the airfield, Maya allowed herself one last look in the rearview mirror. She was leaving behind the life she'd built in Cedar Falls, but she was taking its lessons with her. The knowledge that every person mattered, that kindness was a strength rather than a weakness, that redemption was always possible for those willing to fight for it. The road ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and probably lonely. But for the first time in her life, Maya felt like she was traveling it with someone who truly understood both who she'd been and who she was becoming. The local bartender was dead. The infamous assassin was buried. But the woman driving through the Nevada desert toward an uncertain dawn was finally, completely, authentically alive.